I stood there, a proud mother in white lace, the fabric hugging my form and flowing with delicate elegance, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. The sun glistened against my hair, each golden strand catching the light like it was celebrating this day, alongside me, as if they knew how hard I had fought to keep my family together. My daughter was radiant, truly. I could hardly find the words to express the wave of joy that hit me as I looked at her in her flowing gown, the way it shimmered like new beginnings, a promise of forever. And yet, as she turned to me, her eyes sparkling with a mix of love and uncertainty, she whispered, "I can't believe you approved of him." At that exact moment, my world teetered on an edge I never anticipated, and my heart sank like lead. I glanced around, the joyful laughter of family members ringing in my ears, their smiles blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within this very moment. My heart quickened its pace as I met my son in law's gaze, a wild card of secrets and unspoken truths. Suddenly, everything felt wrong. A pit formed in my stomach, twisting tighter, as I recalled the weeks of silent torment leading up to this moment, how I had unearthed his dirty past, a past filled with shadows and hurt, a trail of broken people littering his history like fallen leaves. Strange phrases like, "I will protect you always," rang hollow in my ears as my daughter turned a blind eye, blinded by love that I watched develop in front of me, and it made my chest tighten as I thought of what could happen to her if she continued down this path. I tried to swallow back the horror I felt in my throat, a bile of resentment boiling against my better instincts not to ruin her day. Today was supposed to be joyous, a celebration of love, yet all I could feel was the choking grip of fear and the need to protect my daughter from the truth I had stumbled upon. Around us, family and friends beamed, the air vibrant with a fresh scent of flowers, as laughter erupted with every snap of cameras, but all I could see were his dark eyes, so full of charm yet equally capable of malice. My husband's eyes narrowed as he sensed the tension building between us like a thunderstorm on the horizon. Did he know? Did he suspect that beneath the surface of this perfect day, a tidal wave of impending betrayal loomed? I felt so small, like I was drowning in a vast ocean of uncertainty, fear washing over me in waves, pulling me under. I grasped my dress to steady myself, the delicate lace feeling rough against my trembling hands. My thoughts raced, replaying that late night phone call I had dismissed. My heart sank at the memory. The voice on the line had been grave and urgent. "He's not who you think he is." Those words echoed in my mind like a haunting melody, filling my thoughts with dread. I should have listened. Perhaps if I had acted sooner, things would not have amassed to this crushing revelation looming at the altar. Time morphed suddenly, stretching painfully as I stood rooted to the ground, my heart shattering slowly. Each fragment echoed a whisper of disappointment and betrayal. I felt like a statue, one blown away from its pedestal, now forgotten amid the manicured gardens of this quaint venue. I stood in the tremor of emotions swirling around me, while others smiled in bliss, unaware of the truth starkly laid out before me. How could they be so careless, so oblivious? Did they not sense the pain etched into my features, the way I could almost feel that familiar warmth I always felt alongside my daughter drain from my body, replaced instead by a chilling sensation, a deep, profound ache that settled in my bones? "Mom," she coaxed gently, her voice laced with confusion and hurt, her brows pulling together as if she were trying to solve a puzzle that had just been tossed carelessly before her. "Are you okay?" Tears welled in my eyes, threatening to spill over as I forced a smile, wanting to give her the illusion of support, of pride in the man she had chosen. But inside, I felt a conflict severing me apart. Was I brave enough to tell her the truth? The weight of my silence felt like a boulder pressing against my chest, my breath hitching painfully in my throat. I am. I am just fine, sweetheart," I managed, my voice cracking slightly, sending alarm bells ringing in my mind for fear that my emotions were careless and spilling out like an open faucet, exposing everything I fought to keep hidden. But beneath that bravado, frustration bubbled to the surface as I felt the direction of control slip from my fingers. He makes me uneasy. Where did that come from? How could I betray my daughter and instead protect her? Her face fell as I said the words, her disappointment visible in the way her mouth twisted. "But why? You have to support me, Mom. He loves me." The trembling of her voice conveyed how easily her heart could shatter like glass at my admission. A piece of my own heart broke alongside, knowing I was delivering blows against her innocent resolve. Part of me was happy, so bubble wrapped, so perfect, while the other part screamed a truth that threatened to tear us apart. She deserved to know, yet today was not the day, was it? "Sweetheart, love can cloud your judgment. I just want you to be safe." The words came out softly, almost pleading. But it felt futile, almost as if I was trapped in quicksand. The more I struggled to pull her away, the deeper we seemed to sink into deceit. "All love clouds judgment, even yours," she retorted sharply, finally standing her ground, the innocence fading as anger flared in her eyes. My husband shifted beside me, the look of bewilderment settling in his features as he felt the tension waver like a deliciously crafted dance, father protective, daughter defiant. The emotions crackled like static, a dangerously taut string ready to snap beneath the weight pressing into my soul. I am not being unfair, I choked out as tears threatened to fall. Can never land yourself with someone who has such a dark past. Mom, you don't even know him like I do. You only see what you want to see, she shouted, eyes flaring in defiance. With every word, she presented a sword of defiance sharper than the pain I felt. It sliced through me, deepening the cuts from before. Wake up, you have to trust me. The guests fell silent as her voice unexpectedly rose above the hum of laughter, eyes shifting toward us. A moving tableau of love turned into chaos. I felt the flush of humiliation creep up my cheeks, the heat palpable as embarrassment threatened to engulf me. I felt every gaze pierce through my skin, heavy and critical, whispering words of scandal behind pretty mouths. I was no longer just a mother, but a spectacle of misplaced judgment. The temperature in the air shifted as the bliss of the day wore away like a mask exposed to the truth of a face. Yes, I do, but you are blind, I whispered fiercely, my voice hoarse. Please listen to me. Blind, or maybe you never wanted to see? She retorted, anger flickering in her eyes like flames ready to engulf everything. My heart raced at the realization. She had never considered my love for her could also be protective, nurturing, and honest. Do you think I would want to see him hurt you? Think about his past, think about the people who were left broken. The walls began to close in as I spoke. I was terrified my words felt accusatory, and though I wanted to shield her, I could feel my resolve shaking under the weight of her defenses. An unexpected silence filled the space, a tangible thing hovering over the guests like fog, thick and ominous. I could tell the whispers ripened, the intrigue curling around us, feeding off the tension that had clouded the air before the wedding march even began. My daughter's face turned pale as she absorbed my words, and I could see the confusion wrestling in her mind clashing against the love she felt, her heart swaying dangerously. This isn't just about you, you know? I took a breath, my heart in my throat, the truth clawing its way toward the surface, a scream I could hardly contain. You deserve a partner who will protect you, not what? She shot back. Her defiance sparked a thought, a deep-rooted hatred creeping in, had I failed her. Who do you want me to be, Mom? My voice faltered as emotions crashed like waves breaking against a rocky shore. I felt the warmth drain from my body, that courageous front I had put up diminishing like the light of a dying ember. I want you to take a moment to listen, I finally murmured. Today should be the happiest moment of your life, but my throat tightened. I just can no longer sit by and watch you follow the shadows. A moment stretched into eternity, and I felt myself teetering on the precipice of losing everything. The clock in my mind ticked ominously, taunting me as I prepared to fight for the truth. The laughter that had once been the heartbeat of the celebration faded like an echo, and all that remained was uncertainty hanging thick in the air as I stood there, terrified of the fallout unfolding before me. Would this be my last stand? Would love be sacrificed at the altar of betrayal in the name of family? But as the spectators shifted uncomfortably in their seats, straining to hear the whispered argument, I felt it, a shift within me. A resilience sparked silently, whispering a promise of strength against the tide of turmoil. I would not quiet down any longer. The facade had cracked, and I could no longer let my daughter's blind love steer her toward disaster. Confront him and listen to your heart, and the truth will come, I pleaded, my voice steadying as defiance watered my roots, preparing me for what lay ahead. I could see my husband darting anxious glances, as if this were all a scene in a tragedy, unsure of how to play his part. The tension was palpable, and just like that, in the middle of this moment, everything around us froze with a single word haunting the air: betrayal. The immensity of our impromptu confrontation loomed heavy around us, and as I stood there, heart racing, I could not help but wonder what the aftermath would bring. Would I lose my daughter today? Would I succeed in saving her from the grip of deceit? The anxiety pulsing within me churned like a raging storm, and still, amidst the uncertainty, I felt the wail of a hidden fire urging me forward, the need for justice burning brighter. The world known as love found within boundaries had shifted, and the looming shadows cast over my heart began to ignite into an inferno. Just then, I caught a movement from the corner of my eye. My husband's face went pale, terror pooling beautifully within his gaze. A figure was approaching from behind my daughter, the laughter fading once more, as I recoiled in sudden recognition of the familiar stride. My heart raced even faster as the moment stretched even more, and a flood of anger surged at what I was about to confront. The air crackled with unresolved tension, thick with the weight of unspoken words. A moment too late, I thought, as time seemed to rearrange itself, aligning once more. The hush deepened. The world had never felt so fragile. I braced myself against the tide. And that was when the door swung open with a mighty creak, echoing throughout the venue, revealing the truth that had been hidden behind walls of lies for far too long. The day should have been about remembering the man I loved. Yet somehow my son's words brought a storm crashing down around me as we stood in the dimly lit kitchen. The scent of burnt toast hung thick in the air, remnants of a breakfast hurriedly made but left untouched. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the background, a sound that would ordinarily comfort me, yet now it felt like an echo of my broken heart. I watched my son, who stood across from me, visibly tense, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jeans, the fabric wrinkling under the weight of unspoken thoughts. Each flicker of worry in his eyes sent a jolt through me. "We need to talk about Dad," he repeated, almost too quietly, his voice barely piercing the heavy atmosphere that threatened to suffocate me. Those words gripped me tighter than the loss of my husband. They threatened to unravel what little was left of my composure. I felt my heart race as dread settled like concrete in my stomach. Dad was everything to me, and to him, the pillar of our lives, the anchor in our chaotic world. I had expected this moment to be filled with reminiscing, with shared stories, all wrapped in warm nostalgia, but instead, a chill washed over me as I braced myself for what was to come. "What do you mean?" I stammered, forcing the words out like shards of glass. The kitchen was painted in shades of dim light, making the space feel small and oppressive. The walls, once alive with laughter and togetherness, felt like they were closing in on me. I wanted to reach out, to touch my son's shoulder or perhaps pull him into an embrace, but my limbs felt heavy, paralyzed by the weight of his revelation. My mind raced, churning with memories of my husband, his warm laughter, his gentle touch, the way he could light up a room just by being in it. Had I known there was a darker side lurking beneath the surface? "Mom," he began again, his voice shaky as if the truth itself was terrified of being set free. I could see the tremor in his hands now, the way they fidgeted as he spoke. "There is something I need to tell you. It is about Dad." The way he said it, so earnest and so hesitant, sent shivers down my spine. My chest tightened and I could feel tears welling, blurring my vision as I stood frozen, struggling to breathe. I never expected this fatidic moment to bear the weight of betrayal. The heart of our family had just shattered at my feet, and I could already feel the sharp edges digging into my soul. My instincts screamed at me to deny, to deflect, but the urgency in his tone would not be silenced. "What is it?" I managed to say, my voice a hoarse whisper. I was terrified of where this conversation was headed, but I needed the truth, no matter how it gnawed at the fragile edges of my heart. My mind was racing, pressuring me to prepare for the impact of whatever bomb he was about to drop. "I found some old messages, a lot of them," he said, his eyes shifting away as if the reality of his words were too heavy to bear. A part of me wanted to shout at him to stop, that I could not bear to hear any more, but it was the day of remembering, I had to know. He took a deep breath, his voice teetering on the edge of cracking. Dad had an affair." Those words hit me like a freight train. I felt as if I had been punched in the gut. Nothing in my life could have prepared me for this revelation. Feelings of shock and confusion washed over me like waves, crashing against the shore of my sanity. Time seemed to halt, and I stood there, paralyzed, desperately trying to catch my breath. My mind raced through fleeting moments from the past, the late nights, the unexplained absences, the subtle shifts in his demeanor. Each memory clawed at me like a feral animal, hungry for the truth. It felt unreal. I could hear my son's voice, a distant echo now, trying to explain, but all I could focus on was the deafening silence in the kitchen, the absence of laughter that once filled every corner of this space we called home. "Mom, I know this is hard," my son said, his voice trembling but resolute. I could see the resolve in his eyes, the courage he had gathered to share this awful truth with me, to peel back the layers of a lie that had been cloaking our lives in comfort. "I cannot just ignore it. I found out it was someone you know, someone we both know. It was Mary, my closest friend, the woman who had stood by my side through so many chapters of my life, sharing dreams and fears like they were sacred secrets." I felt my knees weaken, and I clutched the kitchen counter for support. The betrayal cut deeper than I could ever have imagined. I never thought that someone I had loved and trusted could be capable of such treachery. I felt dizzy, the sorrow of losing my husband mixed horrifically with the betrayal of losing my trust in Mary. I had let her into my life, my family. I had shared everything with her, my joys, my sorrows, my dreams for the future. How could she do this to me? "No," I whispered, shaking my head in disbelief, as if that could somehow deny the reality crashing down around us. "She would never do that, not to me, not to us." My voice wavered, uncertain, shaky like a leaf in a storm. I wanted to believe it. I wanted desperately to reject my son's words, to cling to the hope that this was all a misunderstanding, a cruel joke that had gone too far. But my son's tense expression told me otherwise. His eyes were wide, reflecting the truth he had uncovered. "I wish it were just a misunderstanding, Mom, but the messages, they are explicit. They were talking about being together, about sneaking around. She made it sound like it was nothing, like it was all just fun. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the overwhelming tide of pain threatening to engulf me. How could this be happening? How was it possible to feel so betrayed by the very same woman who had shared my joys, who had sat at my table and laughed with me? And what did this mean for my son? How was he dealing with this twisted reality? In that moment, I felt as if my heart was being ripped apart. The room around me grew smaller, more suffocating, like a tomb where laughter once resided but was now replaced by dead silence. My son looked at me, his expression a mix of sympathy and hurt, as if he was reliving his own feelings of betrayal all over again, trying to bear the burden alone as he looked into my eyes. He was carrying his own grief, navigating this tangled mess while trying to protect me, the woman who had always been his stronghold. I saw his concern, the way he desperately sought my comfort even while his own heart was fractured. Mom, I wanted to tell you before the funeral because I thought you deserved to know, to be prepared if it came up, he said quietly, looking down at the ground as if he could not bear to hold my gaze. I did not want you to be blindsided by the lies of others. You deserve the truth. That kitchen, once filled with laughter and love, now felt like a prison that I could not escape from. I felt the walls closing in, the memories of my husband twisted into painful reminders of a life that had now been tainted by deception. My heart sank further. He was gone, and now I was left to sift through the wreckage of a love that had been both my shelter and my snare. In an instant, my world turned from mourning to chaos, from sorrow to a burning rage that simmered just beneath the surface of my grief. I wanted answers. I wanted to confront this betrayal. Tears welled up in my eyes as the bitterness of betrayal bit at my heart. My husband had been everything to me, and now it felt as though he had stripped away my trust in him, in the world, and in myself. I sensed my tone shift, rising like a tide ready to crash against the shore. Why would you wait until now? Why would you let me mourn him knowing this? My voice cracked under the weight of my emotions, betrayal and hurt spilling out in front of my son as my world unraveled. It was not my place, Mom. I thought it was something we could deal with after we laid him to rest. But it is not fair to pretend he was a perfect man, a saint, when he was not, my son replied, his voice unwavering even as I felt the ground beneath me shifting. I could not let you be fooled. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lash out at someone, anyone. It was all too much, too raw, too real. My heart was racing, pounding against my chest like a caged bird desperate for freedom. I had thought I had lost everything in that moment my husband had passed, but I was simply standing at the brink of an entirely new kind of loss. How could my heart endure this? You think you can just unearth this, expose him for what he was? My voice rose, drowning out all of the quiet that had once settled comfortably in the kitchen, now replaced by a storm I could not contain. You think this is fair? You think I want to hear this? I am mourning the love of my life, not disassembling him piece by piece. My son's eyes were a mirror of my own pain, searching for an answer to an unanswerable question. He was not the enemy, I knew that, and yet here we were, locked in this painful exchange. The depth of our grief was battling for control, and I felt both the need to shield him and to unleash my fury upon him in equal measure. Mom, I did not want to hurt you, but I could not let the truth slip away into silence, he pleaded, stepping closer as if hoping to bridge the chasm that had opened between us in that moment. I wanted to protect your heart, but you deserve to know your marriage was built on uncertainty, on lies. In that moment, a deafening silence enveloped us, heavy and all-consuming. I froze, my breath caught in my throat as I stared at my son, the weight of his revelation settling upon my shoulders. The kitchen, once a warm haven, now felt like a battleground, a place where truth wielded the sharpest weapon and love lay shattered like glass underfoot. I was left reeling, struggling to find my footing as tears streamed down my cheeks, a testament to the storm that raged within me. I had come to lay my husband to rest, to honor the life we had shared, and now, clawing at my heart, was the bitter taste of betrayal. Out of nowhere, a sudden resolve surged. I could not remain paralyzed in this moment. That was not who I was. I would not allow myself to be relegated to a shadow of a woman, swallowed by grief and betrayal. I could feel the pulse of anger igniting within me, pushing aside despair. I would confront this betrayal. I would not allow it to define me. With a heart that felt both heavy and empowered, I turned away, the warmth of the kitchen fading beneath the weight of my decision. I needed to face Mary. I needed to confront all the lies that had woven through my life, to set the truth free like birds ascending into the sky after a storm. I felt my son's eyes on me as I walked away, the gravity of our shared sorrow turning into determination. But now was not the time for weakness. It was time to harness the anger, to channel the hurt into something that would allow me to rise, to reclaim my story. As I stepped out of the kitchen, into the bright light that spilled through the open door, I heard the echo of my son's voice behind me, filled with confusion and concern. I did not look back. I could feel an awakening deep within me. The promise of closure edging closer as I prepared myself to face the ultimate betrayal head on. It was supposed to be a cozy evening, the kind of evening I dreamt about when I was younger. A family gathered around the table, the warm aroma of roasted chicken filling the air, its skin perfectly golden and crispy, surrounded by the bubbling pots of creamy mashed potatoes and savory green beans. Laughter echoed off the walls, wrapping around us in a warm embrace. Just earlier, I had set the table with my finest china, each plate a small work of art, resting delicately beside sparkling glasses that gleamed in the soft amber lights. I felt like the heart of the family, a role I had cherished and worked hard to maintain so these moments could become memories worth celebrating. Then, my granddaughter, the bright-eyed bundle of joy, sat there with her golden curls bouncing as she proclaimed, "Grandma's my favorite." Her voice rang out like music, pure and innocent, and my heart fluttered with pride as if it had just taken flight. I spotted my daughter at the far end of the table, her smile faltering, a shadow creeping into her eyes, narrowing my chest. Had I done something wrong? Did my daughter think I played favorites, as if my heart belonged solely to my granddaughter, a divine little creature who had the ability to weave joy through the air? My son watched with a concerned glance, a heavy silence brewing between us, sensing the tension weaving its way into our joyful bubble. The room suddenly felt tight, the air heavy not from the food but from unwanted words that lingered in corners, ready to interrupt our blissful moment. I dared to look at my daughter again, her features so tight, almost sculpted by an unseen hand, her skin paler than before. I thought perhaps it was just the lighting. I should have known then. And then it happened, a sudden crack of thunder in a room full of sunshine. "You always spoil her, making me look like a terrible mother." Her voice rang out, sharp as glass, cutting through the warmth that had just moments before wrapped us all so tenderly. I froze, the weight of her accusation crashing onto my chest like an avalanche of stone, heavy, suffocating. My pulse quickened and I felt all eyes dart towards me, whispers hanging in the air like thick fog, as if they too needed to process what had just shattered the calm. The laughter that just moments ago filled my home snuffed out like a candle, leaving nothing but an oppressive silence that stretched on, taut and brittle. I do not spoil her," I stammered, my voice thick with emotion, yet somehow distant, as if I were speaking from underwater. She's just sweet. I love her. I love you too." Yet as the words left my mouth, I could see their uselessness hanging there midair, like scattered leaves on a frosty day. The sincerity of my intention, the love I had poured into my family, suffocated under the weight of her words. I could not understand. Why did she need to pit our love against one another? My granddaughter's innocent proclamation now twisted in the air, her small hand still resting on my arm as I struggled to break free from the grip of her mother's hurtful comments. My thoughts raced, a tumble of confusion and hurt. What had I done to deserve such a tumultuous response? Had I missed signs, a request for help that went unheeded, clouded by my own affection for the child who had just filled the room with light? I glanced from my daughter to my granddaughter, whose bright eyes were now wide with shock, innocence stripped away like bark from a tree in a storm. "Grandma is the best," she said weakly, her voice a whisper. I caught my son's eyes, and in that fleeting moment, I wondered if he could sense that the roots of these accusations ran deeper than a simple dinner table spat. The tension was palpable, thickening the air as unspoken words simmered beneath the surface, ready to bubble over. My daughter's face twisted in such pain and accusation that it made my heart ache. "You think you are being a good grandmother," she spat through gritted teeth, "but all it does is make me feel like a failure. Every time you take her out, every time you shower her with gifts, I freeze. It is like my efforts do not matter, that I am just some ghost standing in the background of your fairy tale." I could feel my stomach drop, the intensity of her words knocking the wind out of my chest. My son shifted in his seat, and I could see by the way he clenched his jaw that he, too, felt caught in the crossfire of the fallout. I swallowed hard, seeking composure, but it melted away faster than the ice in my drink. "I never meant to make you feel like that," I managed, but I sounded far weaker than I had hoped. "Loving her does not mean I do not love you." "But it does not matter, does it?" my daughter retorted, her voice trembling like the branches of an overburdened tree. "I try my best, but you keep her in a bubble. You make it feel like she is the center of the universe while you brush aside everything I do." I could not breathe. My heart raced, hammering against the walls of my chest, and I could feel my palms turning clammy, the accusation stinging like salt in an open wound. "Maybe you are just looking at it the wrong way," I dared to say, my voice firming up a little as I tried to grab onto some shred of control. "Looking at it the wrong way?" she exclaimed, disbelief etched across her features. "How could I possibly be looking at this any other way? She loves you more than she loves me, and I feel helpless." "What do you want me to do? Break my back for her to see me as anything but a shadow of her extravagant grandmother?" Her hands were shaking slightly now, and for a moment I almost felt pity rising in my chest. Almost. It is embarrassing, you know? She continued, her bravado withering, fading away. I see other mothers with their children who shine just as brightly, not overshadowed by their own parents. Yet here I am, fighting for her love, having to compete with her grandma. Do not have to compete with me, I snapped, the anger bubbling up suddenly, igniting a fire within me that I had not seen coming. I am her grandmother. She can love us both. Why does it have to be a battle? I only want what is best for her. I thought you would want the same. I was shouting now, and the intensity of it punched through the suffocating silence. The walls seemed to tremble slightly at my raised voice, capturing the startled expressions of my family like artifacts in an ancient museum. My hands clenched into fists, my nails bit into my palms, grounding me even as I felt myself teetering on the edge of this deep chasm of hurt and misunderstanding. Because you are making this about yourself? She spat back, her voice a whip. You just cannot see how your actions impact us. It is all about the magic you are building around her. I feel as if I am losing not only my child, but also my mother in this. Her voice cracked, and a look of devastation washed over her, blending with anger in a swirling tempest of emotion. My husband, usually the peacemaker, sat silently, perhaps still reeling from the surprise attack on his family's evening. I could see him watching our exchange like a spectator at a boxing match, unsure of when to intervene or whom to side with. He pursed his lips, shifting uncomfortably as we hurtled deeper into the storm. I could sense his heart racing along with mine, yet something in me whispered for him to stay out of it, to let me face this alone. This was, after all, a battle I felt I needed to fight. I am trying to make memories. I am trying to create something exceptional for her. I never intended for you to feel pushed aside, but she is a child. I am supposed to be the one boosting her spirits, filling her life with wonder. My voice trembled, but I felt the heat rise in my chest. When we are close, you can draw strength from that too. It should not feel like a buried competition. I do not need sympathy, my daughter retorted bitterly, bitterness sliding through each syllable. I am not looking for a competition, but you are pushing me to the side, and it hurts. It hurts so much. Can you not see that? I opened my mouth to reply, but instead, no words came out. The reality stung deeply, settling in my gut like a stone. I wanted to tell her that this was not what I wanted. I had never meant to come between them. I was merely a nurturing presence, a haven, but now I was standing in the eye of an emotional hurricane. Well, I am sorry if it appears like I am taking her away from you, but that is not how it should be. I finally managed to utter, tone slightly defeated but still holding onto a thread of strength. You are her mother and you do matter. Just because I adore her, that does not mean your place is any less. I do not want you to suffer. That is not who I am. But anything I tried to measure out fell into a pit, and there was only an ear-piercing silence. My granddaughter watched wide-eyed, beset between two raging storms, seeming almost afraid to breathe. You are making me the bad guy here, my daughter hissed, her tone now an accusatory whisper, barbed with tension. I had hoped you would back me up as her mom instead of trying to be the star of the show. I cannot handle this anymore. What were we arguing about? It felt more like a wrestling match between wounds than logic, a battle of emotions that had spiraled too far from its origin. I thought we were supposed to be on the same team, I uttered, half shocked and half pleading, but my voice barely rose above the whispers of betrayal circling around us. Some team this is, she retorted. If I wanted to lose my daughter to you, I should have just handed her over at the start. I cannot compete with you with your glamour. I winced at the finality of her words. They smacked against my heart, raw and exposed, making my chest tighten. The room tightened around me, fitted with tension and despair, our dinner sprawling out unnoticed as my once cozy environment turned sour and bitter. My heart raced, tightly wound and tensed. My granddaughter's statement had planted an idea that had taken root in ways I never imagined before, seeping into corners I had hoped were immune to such hurt. Was my love truly a thorn in my daughter's side? My heart sank deeper at the thought, and I could see the room go pale beneath the weight of our conflict. My hands trembled slightly as I reached out tentatively, but then withdrew them, unsure of how to comfort the hurt swirling amid the animosity. Maybe you are right, I finally admitted, the truth painfully wrapping itself around my silence. But if that is how it appears, know that it is not what I intended. But it was too late. The silence that fell was not just quiet, it was a judgment, a verdict echoing loudly through the cracks of our hearts. It was palpable, thick enough to cut and twist the air even as laughter hovered dreamily just a few moments prior. I wished the ground would just swallow me whole, make this all vanish. Soon, our peace had departed, fleeing from the broken dialogue swarming around us like tired fireflies in fading evening light. It was suffocating, paralyzing me in every way. I wanted to scream for understanding, scream back at the mind-numbing accusations, but all that escaped were silent cries. And then it happened. A sudden noise, a sound shaking loose a thread of despair. The clink of fork against plate, my granddaughter's voice cracking the turmoil, soft yet firm. I love Grandma and I love you too, Mama, she cried, her voice weaving like delicate lace and finding footing in the chaos. But it felt like the final bittersweet note to a symphony gone terribly wrong, lingering in the air, full of unfulfilled potential. You love Grandma more? My daughter snapped, the flames of strife lighting and stirring again, ramping up as regret twisted into anger. But my granddaughter burst into tears, the sweet little thing overwhelmed by the tension around her, and it painted sharp strokes against the joy that once filled this space. As I leaned in, my heart aching, desperate to wrap my arms around them both, my voice heavy with emotions erupted. Please let us not do this. Let us not turn against one another, I begged, not knowing if my words carried weight. The space became thicker, a poisoned air between the three of us, individuals caged by emotional riptides. Enough, my daughter spat, cutting through the pleas. She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor, a sound that reverberated harshly among us. You are making everything so complicated. I am done? And with that, she turned, storming out of the dining room, her footsteps heavy with unspoken defeat, with accusations and unresolved conflicts carrying her away. Mom, my son called, but it was too late. The door slammed behind her, each sound echoing the finality of everything that had just transpired. The air felt electric, charged with unresolved anger and sorrow. My hands shook again as I reached for my granddaughter, whimpering softly, but she pulled back, finding solace in the shadows. I was left with a feeling of dread as I sank into my chair, shattered pieces swirling like confetti around us, the echoes of my daughter's words still tangling in spider webs above the air. I had never expected an evening so full of promise to collapse into such chaos. As the silence enveloped us, I sat on the edge of despair and hope. The bitterness lingered, wrapped around the room like a clingy fog, and in that moment, I could feel the walls closing in as the truths rooted in our hearts made demands that none of us were quite ready to face. And perhaps most shocking of all, I could feel the strong stirrings of resolve beginning to fester deep within me. How could I consider myself an agent of joy amidst surrendering to hurt? It was time for me to reclaim not only my place in my granddaughter's life, but to mend the fractures running through my daughter's heart. If I could somehow muster the courage, if I could weave a different conclusion to our story, I would take the first steps of my own revolt against the tides of despair threatening to pull me down. I would not allow this to become the end I should have known. I should have felt the warning signs like a storm brewing in the distance, but I was too caught up in the magic of Las Vegas to notice. We had been so excited to celebrate our anniversary in a city that promised adventure and allure, where the neon lights shone brighter than my dreams of a perfect marriage. Everything about that day felt like a fairy tale as we strolled along the strip, my husband's hand warm in mine, laughter spilling from his lips like the fountains dancing in front of us. When he looked at me, his eyes sparkled with joy, and I felt the rush of memories tugging at my heart, moments from years ago when our love was still new and full of promise. But that joy was a fragile thing, when I was about to shatter myself. When the words tumbled from his mouth, "What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas," I chuckled, charmed by his carefree spirit. I remember how easy it was to laugh back then, how simple life felt before the weight of reality began to bear down on us. My husband always had that lightheartedness, the way he could turn the mundane into a festival of fun. But this time, I sensed a shadow lurking beneath those twinkling eyes, though I dared not let it in. I should have questioned it, but instead, I let myself drown in nostalgia. After we returned to our hotel room, the distant hum of the strip through the window merely a backdrop to our laughter, he excused himself to the bathroom. I settled onto the plush bed, the scent of fresh linens comforting me, and took a moment to absorb it all, the bright lights reflecting off the glass buildings outside, the echoes of joyful tourists in the corridors, the glimmer of hope that this trip would rekindle the fire in our relationship. But the universe had other plans. Then I saw it there on the bed, a phone. It was one of those brand new models that felt slippery in my hand, the screen bright and inviting. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone had left it behind. But then it pulsed, vibrating wildly as if it were alive, begging for my attention. Curiosity flared within me like wildfire. What was the harm in just taking a peek? I can remember the way my heart raced, an alarm bell ringing softly in the back of my mind that I so easily ignored. As I swiped the screen awake, I was met with a dazzling array of messages lined up like dark storm clouds ready to unleash their fury. Flirtatious words jumped off the screen, each text, each heart emoji a dagger to my heart. A pit opened deep inside me, nausea now swirling, twisting like the carousel of lights outside our window. My breath caught in my throat as I scrolled through the selfies, noting every smile that did not belong to me, every moment shared that should have been our private treasure. I felt those memories, those pleasant moments we had shared, slip through my grasp like sand through my fingers. My heart shattered piece by piece as my mind began to race. Who was this woman? What had they shared? Was he really willing to throw everything away for some fleeting thrill in a city built on extravagance and deception? It felt as if I had stepped into a cruel reality show, where the twist was revealed not just to the audience but to me, the one who had been betrayed in the most painful way. The laughter that danced through the hotel room just moments ago faded to silence, and I could practically hear the gears in my mind grinding together as I tried to process this betrayal. What had I done to ignite this kind of infidelity? Memories flooded over me. The late nights when he said he was working late, the times when he seemed distant or distracted over dinner, the way he had started to roll his eyes at simple questions I asked. Could it have been building for so long, and I was too blind to see it? I felt foolish standing there, all those memories tainted by someone else's presence in our life. Time felt frozen as I let each realization sink in. The exhilaration of celebrating years together, of building a family, came crashing down on me, and I was left standing stark naked in the truth of my husband's lies. My heart felt heavier than the glittering weight of the world outside as I clutched that phone, wishing that I could have the answers I desperately needed before he returned. I saw the bathroom door creak open out of the corner of my eye, and in that fleeting moment, dread pooled in my stomach like dry ice, chilling everything around me. He stepped into the room, water still glistening on his skin. I wanted to hope he would see the storm brewing within me, that he would see the betrayal lurking in the air like an unwelcome guest who had overstayed her welcome. But instead, he looked at me with a bright smile, blissfully unaware, or was he? I had never felt more alone than I did at that moment, standing amidst the debris of my shattered trust. There was a silent battle within me. The urge to confront him screamed in my mind, but the part of me that sought to preserve my seemingly perfect family clamped down hard, silencing the accusations clamoring for release. I had to remember this was the man I loved, the man I thought would stand by my side through thick and thin. But how could I let this go? How could I brush aside the reality of what I had found? With shaking fingers, I placed the phone back on the bed as if the weight of it would crumble the illusion he had so carefully crafted. I took a deep breath, it trembled in my chest, a hesitant inkling of resolve taking form. The moment stretched, each heartbeat echoing in the tense air between us. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, casting an aura of innocence that felt painfully deceptive. I met his gaze, and the sparkle in his eyes flickered momentarily. Was that fear? Guilt? My own heart raced like a runaway train, colliding with the reality of our life. The silence stretched between us, thick and stifling, until at last I broke it. My voice, so firm yet laced with vulnerability, cut through the tension like a knife. We need to talk. Those words hung heavy in the air, and I watched as the color drained from his face. It was as if I had slapped him, a physical crack in his facade. His mouth opened slightly as if to speak, but no words came out, only silence. I could see panic overtaking his features, the reality crashing in on him like a wave. Was he finally realizing that I had found the secret he had diligently buried? Could he hear the unspoken accusation buried in my tone? He stepped back, and it was the sort of movement that felt like stepping away from a boiling pot, trying to avoid the inevitable. My husband stared at me, a mask of confusion crossing his expression that only fueled the fire inside me. I half wished he would deny everything, spin a web of lies to entrap me in a soothing lie, but something deep inside demanded the truth. I could feel the power that had been sucked away from me for so long returning, surging through my veins, igniting that flicker of rebellion I thought I had lost. The laughter of nearby tourists seeped through the walls, a stark reminder of the life we had outside this room. Could they sense the betrayal lurking in the air? Or was it merely a mirage, just like our love? Why was it that the truth felt so loud in the silence between us? I could not let this moment slip away, not again. I needed answers, and I needed them now. What are we doing here, really? I asked, my voice slightly shaking but determined. Is this the life we imagined together? Because it does not seem that way to me. Each word tore through the space, filling the void left by the joy we once shared. He opened his mouth, but I pressed on, a dam of emotion breaking loose. You were supposed to be my partner, my support, my everything. Yet here we are in the middle of Vegas, with the reality of you sitting in that bathroom, while I uncovered your lies. I never realized how powerful words could be until they flew from my mouth, fueled by anger, heartbreak, and raw betrayal. The fluorescent lights felt like spotlights on our shattered marriage as his expression morphed from confusion to horror. I was no longer the sidekick in this tale. I had taken the reins. There was a shift in our dynamics, an awareness that this was no longer a celebration, but a funeral for the life I thought we shared. His eyes darted from mine to the phone, as if it were a venomous snake waiting to strike. There was a glimmer of realization, perhaps a glimmer of doubt that he could scheme his way out of this. But no, there would be no escaping this. I was through being the fool, and as I stood there, facing the man who had betrayed me, I felt the weight of my years settled on my shoulders like a heavy cloak. My husband, I said, emphasizing the weight of those words, this was supposed to be our moment, a celebration. But instead, you took my trust and ran off with it for an illusion. What can I believe now? What can I trust when everything I know feels tainted? Every word hit the air with the weight of a revelation, and I saw him falter, a crack forming on the surface of his facade. Just one crack, one slight crack was all it took for the truth to flood in. He had nowhere to hide now. But I noticed something, a slight widening of his eyes, a flicker of something that could only be described as fear. My heart raced with exhilaration. For the first time, I held the upper hand, however brief it may be. The air buzzed around us, electric with unspoken truths and half-formed lies, the remnants of a marriage that was barely holding itself together. As his facade teetered on the brink of collapse, a pang of victory coursed through me. It was enough to force the memories of our happy times into sharper relief, a painful reminder of all I had lost. What if this was it? What if this moment in our room, illuminated by twinkling lights, was the beginning of my rebirth? I vowed to stand my ground, like a tree in a storm that refuses to bend despite the wind's fury. But then, fear crept back in, reminding me of our daughter, our son, and the life we built together. Would this moment damage everything? And then, just when I thought I could reignite the flames of conviction, the phone vibrated violently on the bed once more, pulling my attention away from his turmoil. I glanced down just in time to see a new message pop up on the screen. My breath hitched and a weight settled deep in my stomach. It was from someone new, someone who had no idea that I was sitting here, the unsuspecting victim in a web of lies. My husband's eyes shifted, and I could see his fear mount higher, like the heat before a storm, swirling and threatening to spill over. We were teetering on the precipice, our love hanging by the thinnest of threads, and I could feel the smoke rising. The revelations were just beginning, and I was standing here ready to ignite the fuse. But as I glanced at him again, ready to demand the truth one last time, all I could see was the fading sparkle in his eyes. It was the beginning of the end, but so much more than that, a rebirth of a new strength that I never knew I had. This would not end with just tears and sorrow. Oh no, I had plans to make, and revenge was just around the corner. The air grew thick, and I was ready to fight. I sat in the sterile hospital room, the antiseptic smell stinging my nostrils as I stared at the cream-colored walls, each tick of the clock echoing in my ears like a drumming reminder of my fragility. Bandages wrapped around my head, pressing against my wounds, left me feeling both vulnerable and trapped. The sharp, dull ache emanating from my body seemed to meld into a haze, the pain blurring the reality of where I was. I could barely remember the accident that brought me to this miserable place, yet I could feel every moment of grief that clung to the atmosphere. It was suffocating, like a thick fog rolling in, heavy and unwelcoming. I lay still, staring at the dim ceiling, waiting for some news, some fragment of normalcy to arrive and pierce the dark clouds of confusion that loomed over me. My heart began to race with the thought of family. My daughter had promised to come. I hoped my husband would follow. Perhaps even my granddaughter might brighten the dimness of this place. I longed for the warmth of their presence, the laughter that could cut through my isolation. But then the door creaked open, and my son stepped tentatively into the room. His face was pale, drained of color, and the way he carried himself suggested that the weight he bore was far too heavy for his young shoulders. Anxiety coursed through me, expecting him to carry news about someone I loved, someone who could mend the shattered bonds of my family. As I leaned up on the thin mattress, I felt my heart swell with hope, yet it wavered as he took a step closer. I noticed him shifting, his hands fidgeting at his sides, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. When his lips parted and the words spilled out, "You won't believe who was here," I should have felt relief. Instead, panic squeezed my chest. What did he mean? I held my breath, my heart racing in my chest, the clock ticking louder than ever. But the bomb he dropped next reverberated through me like a kick to the gut. Dad was here and he brought her. Those four words hung in the air, wrapping around me like a noose, constricting and relentless. My heart plummeted into despair, crashing against the jagged rocks of betrayal. My husband had been here in this sterile room, and I had been unconscious while he wove his web of lies. What manner of deceit was this? I could hardly process his words, and I felt bile rise in my throat like a putrid wave crashing against the shore of my sanity. While I lay there fighting for my life, he was off exchanging hollow words with someone else. The betrayal lurked in the corners of my mind, threatening to suffocate me as I struggled to comprehend the gravity of my son's revelation. My son's eyes, those warm, innocent pools that had once always been a source of comfort, were now filled with pity as he added the crushing words. He said he loves her, Mom. The air thickened in my lungs, and for a heartbeat, I felt as if the walls were closing in on me, the sterile room no longer a safe cocoon but a suffocating prison. I pressed my palms against my baggy hospital gown, my fingers trembling. All those moments of trust I had given him, the loyalty I had clung to amidst life's storms, felt like a cruel joke now. I wanted to scream, to rage against the injustice of it all, but nothing would come. Instead, silence enveloped us. My son's voice echoed in my head while my heart shattered like glass. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring the sterile room, the IV drip hanging like a harbinger of my changing fate. I could not reconcile the person I thought I loved with the man who had not only betrayed me but paraded his infidelity in my face while I languished in this bed. Did you hear them? I managed to choke out, my voice barely a whisper, its fragility reflecting my shattered heart. My son went pale, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the truth had landed squarely on him. I had hoped he might bring me something different, some glimmer of hope, but the anguish in his eyes only confirmed the extent of my husband's betrayal. He said she was someone he met at work, my son divulged, his voice trembling as if he feared the truth might cut him too. He said he had feelings for her, feelings he wanted to explore. As my son's words broke through, the realization crashed over me like a sudden wave, leaving me gasping for breath. My husband had not only committed the unforgivable, he had ventured into a realm so entirely foreign to me, one I had thought was safe. He doesn't even know how much this hurts, does he? I murmured, barely conscious of the tears now cascading down my cheeks. How could he do this to me? To us? I could see the struggle in my son's face. He did not want to be the bearer of such harsh truths, but he had delivered them with the courage of a soldier charging into battle. I heard him saying things, Mom. Sweet things, he confessed, his gaze falling to his fidgeting hands. It was like he was trying to convince himself that it was all okay. The cruel irony of the situation twisted in my gut. While I fought for my life, he was finding solace in another woman. I could almost see him, my husband, spinning his tales of love like a spider weaving intricate webs, tangling others in the process, but never realizing the devastation he left behind. And what did you say? I inquired, needing to know if there was any thread of loyalty left in the bond we once shared. My son looked stricken, caught between wanting to protect me and the reality he wished to shield me from. I froze, he admitted, his voice faltering. I could not believe it, Mom. I couldn't even speak. He just walked away like everything was fine, like you were just a memory, like we were just. He sighed, struggling to articulate the depths of his disappointment, and I felt his pain cut through me like shards of ice. My chest tightened, and it was a struggle to breathe. All those years, I told myself that we were a team, partners against the world. Now I was annihilated. Why would he bring her here? I whispered, the bitterness in my voice as sharp as the glare of fluorescent lights overhead. I felt so small in that moment, trapped between resentment and disbelief. The idea of her, this other woman, occupying space in my life while I was fighting for survival, made my skin crawl. Somewhere deep inside, a slow burn ignited, pulsing with the raw desire for vengeance. This is his way of saying he has chosen her over me, I thought bitterly. The despair began to transform, morphing into something heavier, something darker, a stage being set for a reckoning. I do not know, Mom, but I could see in his eyes that he felt nothing for you anymore, my son replied. There it was, that sharp blade twisting deeper, each word a reminder of my husband's betrayal striking through the silent room, echoing ominously. Anguish welled up inside me, and I felt the hot tears streaming down my cheeks as I caught sight of my son's face. He was grappling with his own emotions, feeling torn between defending me against the reality of our shattered ideals and the anguish of seeing his father break away from his family. You do not have to defend him, I said, my voice low but firm. Some things are unforgivable. In that sterile room, the weight of unspoken truths hanged heavy in the air, a palpable tension crawling along the walls. I could see my son's heart breaking with every passing moment, the energy between us crackling like electricity. I have to know more, I proclaimed, more to reassure myself than to ask him. No longer was I going to be the victim of his duplicity. The anguish suffocating me began to morph into strength, igniting a flame within me that would not be easily extinguished. The gravity of my circumstance fueled my rage, and I could feel the steady thrum of vengeance rising within me. As the harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, I realized this was the moment that would bring a decisive change, a catalyst for everything that would follow. I will not allow this to go unanswered. He owes me more than this, I thought, steeling my resolve at the thought of confronting him, exposing him for the coward he was beneath his mask of false comfort. I would not sit idly while he danced to another woman's tune. I was done being the silent martyr. Mom, my son's voice cut through my thoughts, tentative and concerned. Are you okay? I turned my gaze back to him, trying to pull myself together to display some semblance of strength, despite the turmoil churning within. I will be, I said, forcing a shaky smile, even as my heart pounded wildly in my chest. The sound of distant beeping from the machines marked the rhythm of my apprehension as I tried to muster courage I was not sure I possessed. It was ironic, I thought, how I fought for my life, yet the battle I truly needed to fight was waiting just outside these walls. My son leaned closer, concern lacing through his voice as he scrutinized me. Mom, what are you going to do? The question hung in the air, heavy with consequence. I could sense him searching my face for answers. In that moment, I realized that while I may have been wounded, I was not broken. My heart raced with a mixture of uncertainty and determination, the room silent but for